I know that it can often feel like anything we do is just a drop in the ocean, so to
So to
speak.
speak.
But well, two thoughts. One is when I feel discouraged, I just want to be able to look in the mirror and know that I did my best. Whether or not it makes a difference, provided I know that I brought my best game to this. And then the other thing is, sometimes use this metaphor of the 5 million oar strokes that it took to get me across three oceans. One oar stroke didn't get me very far, but you take 5 million tiny actions and they really do add up. And every single one of those 5 million oar strokes had to be taken. So it's not just a drop in the ocean, it really does add up.
Hello, welcome to a new edition of Code Green Conversations for a Future We Want and Our Kids Deserve. I always begin by genuinely saying I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest, but this one I'm thrilled, genuinely, because if you have not heard of Roz Savage, you're never going to forget her, I promise. I was lucky enough to meet her at an Al Gore climate reality training back in, I don't know, early days, 2006, 7. And I was so awed by what she has done for the oceans that I had to follow her. And last time I interviewed her, the last few times, I think she was out on one of the three oceans that she rode across successfully. Atlantic, Pacific, Indian. I may have the order wrong, but we did a couple of interviews from out in the middle of the ocean. I've just been and still am amazed that someone could do this. And you have gone on to do something equally impressive and impactful. But let's just go back a little bit. You had a corporate background. You decided that you needed to do something important, and you came up with solo rowing across an ocean or two. And what did that teach you about the fact that we are now, this is the news hook that we're here for, now at a first tipping point, that the warm water coral reefs are near or at tipping point. What does that mean? That means that there's such a big die-off because of the ocean warming, the temperatures, and the ocean acidification that instead of these gorgeous coral colors, with the blue water, the bleaching makes it look like white skeletons, and that's really what it is. And it's past the point of no return, meaning, bar some miracle, and they're trying to work on some genetic answers, we're not going to get it back. And that not only is just sad for its own sake, and scuba divers, but most people don't realize that coral is home. They're like little condominiums, as explained to me, for a quarter of all marine life. So, Roz, you did not dive deep. You were on the surface, but I'm sure you had a connection, you still do, to the oceans that are being so impacted. And most people don't realize it because we don't see it. We can't see under the surface. So, welcome and tell us how this news hit you, first of all.
Great to be here with you, Betsy. Lovely to see you again. And I'm sorry that it's this heartbreaking topic that has brought us together. Um, so many different ways that we could go with this. Yes, I did spend 7 years of my life on and off rowing across oceans, specifically because I'd woken up to the environmental crisis and I wanted to find a way to get people's attention for my environmental message and doing something as deeply unpleasant and often terrifying as rowing alone across oceans seemed like a good way to get people's attention so that I could then through podcasts and blogs and talks, books, videos talk about the urgent need to take better care of this planet. But I just want to wind back to a little while before that because when I was back in my old corporate job, I did actually do quite a bit of scuba diving just as a leisure diver. I first learned to dive in 1994 on the Great Barrier Reef. And I can still remember so vividly the day before I started my PADI scuba diving course, I'd gone snorkeling for the first time ever in my life. And I was just blown away by my first glimpse of that world underneath the waves. The coral reef was just a wonderland. I got quite a sunburned back, and the boat nearly left without me because I was just so completely absorbed in this amazing underwater world. And learning to scuba dive was not easy for me. I do not like getting water up my nose, and a lot of the drills that you have to do are quite challenging for me in that respect. But I was so motivated to do it because I was so in love with that magical underwater world. So I haven't been diving now for quite a number of years, and I actually don't want to because having been fortunate enough to dive, as I say, on the Great Barrier Reef, in the Maldives, in the Seychelles, in the Red Sea, um, in Belize, and being witness to that incredible beauty, to go back now and sort of see a coral reef like a ghost town, just bleached white, and with so many of that rich ecosystem, all of that biodiversity and all of that glorious color, not just of the corals themselves, but of the fish too that live there.
Missing, yeah.
I wouldn't be able to stand it. It would break my heart. And, you started this piece by talking about the future that our children deserve. Well, I don't actually have children, but when I think of the generations to come and how coral reefs might just be something that they read about in the history books,
See pictures of.
yeah, that's not a legacy that I'm proud of. And that's a big part of what led me to stand for Parliament and what keeps me going through my daily life as an MP here in the UK. It's a tough job, and there are many days that are deeply frustrating. But last week, on Thursday, was one of my good days. We were bringing the Global Oceans Treaty, the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdictions Bill, to the House of Commons to ratify that. And this is about the high seas where I have spent so much of my time between 2005 and 2011. And to be able to talk from the heart about the vital importance of protecting the seas and how that connects with climate change, how a lot of that damage is being done to the seas is by the warming and by the acidification, both of which are byproducts of climate change.
Not to mention all the plastics, overfishing, all those other problems. But the coral dying, that's the canary in the ocean, right? What that signals, the
Yeah,
domino effect.
they're very sensitive to temperature change, and as you said, at 1.5 degrees of warming, they are already critically endangered now, and by 2 degrees, then we can wave goodbye to them. And I really hate to say this because I do try to be optimistic,
Good.
but 2 degrees of climate change is probably already pretty much baked in. So some corals will survive. There are some corals that are more resilient to warming oceans. Um, and, nature is powerful and it can recover if we give it a chance. So I'm sure that in many, many millennia from now, the oceans will recover. But whether humans are around to see that, I just don't know.
Maybe the ocean and rest of the planet. No, for sure, we'll be better off without humans. We have not done such a good job, not only of caring for nature, our climate, our oceans, biodiversity, all of that impacted right now, with ecosystems really in collapse. And the other big problem, the other side of that is most people, just general folks in mainstream, even a lot of friends of mine, maybe yours, are just unaware of how widespread this collapse is. We're in collapse. That sounds so dramatic, but based on what I'm reading, it's true. Or we're the beginning stages, the beginning of the end. I hate to say, people are not aware of what's going on. And that's the part that keeps me going. And I'm sure you too, that if everybody knew what we knew, they wouldn't sleep as well as they probably do now, but they would be, I think, paying a lot more attention.
Yes, we've known for a long time that the oceans are in real trouble. The amazing Dr. Sylvia Earle, a very, very well-known American oceanographer who is now, I think, nearly 90, but I last
I
saw
think
her at the
90,
UN.
90. I just saw her at
I,
Climate Week, maybe
I
90.
saw I saw her at the UN Oceans Conference earlier this year, and she is still such a committed and passionate campaigner, a voice for the oceans. And I think this has been part of the problem, and this is part of the reason that I chose Ocean Voyages as my campaign platform. I'm actually quite scared of the ocean, with just cause. I think it is a scary and dangerous place. Um, but I felt like the oceans needed more human allies. They needed people to go out there to be a voice for the ocean because not many people live on the ocean. There aren't many voters on the ocean. Politicians tend not to shine a spotlight on ocean issues as much. There are a lot of people who love the ocean, but it very rarely figures in the top 10 issues that voters care about.
Even the environment, which I say our environment, right? Still, it's coming last. And that's something we could talk about all day, what's causing that and what we could do about it. But I want to go back for a minute. You spent, I think, 520 days, you said, on the ocean, across three oceans. You had a few false starts, but you made it across. You broke records. You did not, the two things I always say when I say, who you are, what you've done, I say, she didn't have a tracker boat behind her. How unusual is that?
Most ocean rowers don't have very much money, and I was no exception to that. So to have an entire crew in a boat following you is I can only think of one ocean rower that actually did have that luxury, and that's because he was tackling the Southern Ocean, which is the gnarliest ocean of them all. So it was very much for safety. I think
Some
solo
close
ocean
calls, though.
rowers.
You did have some close calls. You've written a couple of books, and you're the subject of a documentary. Like I said, the bio is lengthy and impressive as heck.
Yeah, and so my first couple of books were about the ocean rowing, but the book that I still think about the most is the one that I wrote based on my doctoral dissertation, in which I was asking myself the burning question for both you and me, Betsy, which is how are we as human beings, supposedly smart people, why are we simply not getting on track for a sustainable future? We know what the problem is. We know what a lot of the solutions are, but we're just not putting them into practice. And I was actually just having this conversation a little bit earlier with somebody here in Parliament about the need to take a systemic approach to this. The model of economic capitalism that we have at the moment has got all the wrong incentives. The incentive is there to extract as much value for free as we can from nature's bounty and then to pollute back into nature, whether it's into the air, into the ocean, into the soil, as much as we can get away with within the law. And while those incentives persist, I think it's going to be very, very hard for us to take the kind of action that we need. We live in an increasingly financialized world. You know, if they could bottle air and sell it back to us, they probably would. We'd be in that total recall kind of world. Um, and you know the saying, it's easier to imagine the end of civilization than it is to imagine the end of capitalism.
Oh, that's a great quote. I mean, disturbing, but I've not heard that before. Wow, I think I agree.
I need to look up the source of that. I'm afraid I don't remember the name. Um, but it does feel that we need to shift. I mean, if our model of capitalism was actually delivering well-being and health and happiness to the majority of humans, then maybe I could say, well, I understand why we would be doing this. But when we look at the US, one of the wealthiest countries on the planet, but with record levels of depression, of suicide, of addiction, of deep, deep unhappiness and deep inequality. Clearly, the current model is not even delivering well-being.
No, and loneliness. And my green dream, my biggest one would be that we take all these people who are alone on their phones, doom scrolling, and give them purpose because this passion and this purpose does I just had a big birthday. People say, you don't look blah. And I say, it's my passion, it's my purpose. It's a great way to be engaged in the world, to think outside yourself, to feel a sense of urgency, sometimes too much urgency, because again, we know too much. And have put people to work. It kills me when I hear people are spending their days on Wordle or video games. Like, don't you realize the planet is in death throes? And then
Yeah,
nobody wants to hear that, but You have to. We can't just tiptoe around this anymore. We've kicked the carbon can down the road way too long. The last couple of decades were critical. Don't get me started about how corporate media has not done a good job of connecting the dots because, as I say, look what they did with COVID. They covered it like the life and death emergency it was almost overnight. The entire globe transformed. Behaviors were changed.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking up here at my shelf of books that I have here in my office in Westminster, and it's books like Post-growth, prosperity without growth, the care economy, what is the economy for anyway, the no growth imperative, the end of growth, and books are talking about how those contributors to genuine human happiness and well-being, good relationships, as you say, a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, a sense of community, a sense of agency. These are the things, those sort of deathbed virtues, like when we look back over our lives, when as it's drawing to a close, and say, have I lived well? These are the things that we're going to be thinking about. It's not going to be what score did I get in the video game or how many toys did I buy. It is going to be, did I leave the world a better place?
Yeah.
Did
And
people love me? Did I love people?
did I make a difference? And you, more than anyone I know personally, have and will continue to, I have no doubt. And, when you read the GDP reports, domestic what is it?
Gross
Gross
domestic
domestic
product.
product. Yeah. It's like Wall Street is like acting as if everyone, actually, too many are acting as if industries acting as if it's business as usual. It's like, these people don't realize. And it worked for a long time as fossil fuels have served us to have our wonderful modern lifestyle. But things reach a point of not so positive, negative feedback and negative feedback loops. And we're seeing that now, exponentially. And it's time to change. Things are not supposed to stay the same. And Mother Nature is going to change us if we don't change what we're doing to care for her.
Yes, I live in perpetual hope that we will have a massive outbreak of common sense and realize that actually we depend on nature. We are part of nature. And we've
Hello.
got similar problems here in this country. We've got a supposedly left-wing progressive government. The Labour Party are in power at the moment, but their constant mantra is growth, growth, growth. And I'm just beside myself at the moment because they want to build a lot of new houses. And yes, we do need more affordable housing, but we have a lot of underused housing stock here that we could be using. And they are looking at throwing all sorts of environmental protections out of the window so that they can pursue this program of house building. And it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be a win-lose between humans and nature. If we actually bring our intelligence and our resourcefulness to this, we can make it a win-win, but we just have to think a little bit more creatively.
And
And when we think about people who are, maybe struggling with normal life, and so they retreat into the world of digital games and doom scrolling, it,
escapism.
it's not just their time that we're losing, it's their intelligence, because I absolutely believe that everybody has got something to contribute to this discussion. That if we are going to get on track for that more sustainable future, we all have to bring our best selves to that question.
Absolutely. And as an MP, how much say do you have representing the Liberal Party? How many opportunities are there to speak? I've seen some of your videos, and people look very enthralled, as they should be.
It's very frustrating. So, for the non-Brits listening to this, the Liberal Democrats are currently the third party in this country. We are the largest third party in 100 years, but we still only have about a tenth of the House of Commons. And our current government have got a very large majority. So on one third of the vote, incidentally. But that's the peril of first past the post rather than proportional representation, with which is another axe I have to grind. So basically, this government, what it wants, it gets, because they can just bulldoze it through, so to speak. So any power that I have is soft power. Earlier this year, I did bring the Climate and Nature Bill as a private member's bill to this government. They did not allow it to pass. sadly, but they did make certain pledges, including ratifying the Global Oceans Treaty as part of our negotiations. So they are following through on that. Um, you would think that being a member of Parliament would feel powerful, um, but for all of the frustration that I feel here in Westminster, I do have an antidote which helps to keep me sane and reasonably happy, which is within my constituency. So this is a specific geographical place of about 73,000 voters. So that's aged 18 and above. And we actually have a lot of phenomenal groups and people doing really, really good work within their communities, whether it's nature conservation, community energy, flood resilience, community gardens, just brilliant people who get it. And they are doing their bit to make this world a better place. And so at the moment, we are mapping these groups and looking at how we can bring them together in a project that is really looking at how do we build resilience for the next 25 years. My constituency is called the South Cotswolds. Cotswolds. Recently, you might have heard about J.D. Vance had a vacation there.
They chased him out, right? Or that was at the ski vacation. Hard to keep up.
Um, so this project is called Stronger South Cotswolds. How can we be stronger together? How can we work together in community to make our world a better place? So in a way, this is sort of my environmental Trojan horse, dressed up under the cloak of resilience.
Mhm.
But to me, it's my absolute passion project. And it connects me with stories of what's working, because it's so easy when we read the media, if it bleeds, it leads, and it can be so depressing. And I think we all need to hear more about what is actually working so that we can be inspired and encouraged, and also so that we can take those brilliant projects and we can adopt and adapt them elsewhere.
And that's why I've been interviewing solutionaries like you, although there's no one like Roz Savage, truly, not exaggerating, to show, the hope and what's being done. And, it feels like the greater public just went from problem, what problem to, oh yeah, it's too late. We're screwed. We're doomed. Like, wait a minute. There's tens of thousands of people, you would call them environmentalists, but whatever, in neighborhoods, communities across the world, I suspect, working so hard, often with low pay or no pay, to make this happen. And then you go out in the real world, as I say, it's like a parallel universe. I'm running around Climate Week, thousands of people. And in the middle of that week, Trump, I can't even say President Trump, stands up at the UN and says it's climate is the biggest hoax, the biggest con job ever. Don't even get me started. And you realize we're in a bubble, or they're in a bubble, or something. We need to bring these parallel universes together, because guess what? Climate and all environmental change, and it is more appropriate to say chaos or climate collapse, is affects everybody. And it has and will kill more people than COVID did. And there's an environmental factor to pandemic. So for all these reasons, people need to wake up and smell the carbon. We'll close because I know you have another interview, and I certainly respect your precious time. What would you have people do first to learn more about your incredible adventures on the high seas and beyond, and also just in their daily lives? And then we'll let you go.
Well, I suppose a final message, and I'm guessing that most people who are watching this are already doing good stuff in their local life, in their locality and in their daily lives. And I know that it can often feel like anything we do is just a drop in the ocean, so to speak. But well, two thoughts. One is when I feel discouraged, I just want to be able to look in the mirror and know that I did my best, whether or not it makes a difference, provided I know that I brought my best game to this. And then the other thing is, sometimes use this metaphor of the 5 million oar strokes that it took to get me across 3 oceans. One oar stroke didn't get me very far, but you take 5 million tiny actions and they really do add up. And every single one of those 5 million oar strokes had to be taken. So it's not just a drop in the ocean, it really does add up. And we also need to be each other's cheerleaders and sometimes maybe shoulders to cry on. But yes, everyone listening to this, please keep doing what you're doing. You're not alone. And I still think change, as you say, can happen very quickly. So I am still stubbornly optimistic.
In either direction, right? We do have tipping points, and we've just hit the first one out of 6 or 7. Antarctic ice sheet, Greenland, Amazon forests going from being carbon sinks to carbon emitters.
Yeah.
We know. So I just want to close by saying that you have done so much and you are so impressive. I really encourage people to read Roz's books and go to her website, watch the documentary or two that's been made about her. I'll close with this. When she was on those oceans, and anytime I had a bad environmental day or just a bad day, things were really getting to me, I thought about her out there in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the night, with nobody following her. And I just said, whatever I'm dealing with, it is nothing, a drop in the ocean. So thank you for your courage. You are so beloved. We have a circle of people who just gather regularly to be in your presence. And it's such a warm, loving, generous presence. And I'll try not to cry by letting you go, saying thank you so much for your work. Continued, and as I always said then, and I'll say it again, row, Roz, row.
Bless you, Betsy. Thank you. And keep up the good green fight. Lots of love.
Likewise.
Bye.
Bye-bye.